Hey everyone, this is acyuta-bhava from Nightlight Astrology, and today we are going to take a look at the conjunction between Mars and Venus that is happening in the sign of Capricorn, and we are going to take it through the houses according to your rising sign. So that is our agenda for today. In the meantime, I want to remind you all that it is coming up quickly that two of my mentors are offering a course on the Bhagavad Gita that I'm really excited to share with you. If you go to their website, bhaktywise.com, you can click on the Study With Us tab and learn about the class Unlocking the Mysteries of the Bhagavad Gita. For those of you guys who like my work, these are two of my mentors and teachers, well-respected elders in my community. They are teaching a 12-week introduction to the Bhagavad Gita. This is one of the seminal texts of the yogic tradition in India and world sacred religious texts in general. And it is one of the daily texts that I turn to for wisdom and insight. I read the Bhagavad Gita. I read the same chapter every day for a full lunation cycle and then move to the next chapter. And I've been doing this for several years in a row. So it is just an amazing text. I couldn't recommend learning about it more. And the class starts March 15th, goes to May 31st. It's held on Tuesday evenings from 8 to 9:30 p.m. It is a donation-based program, so you can enroll and pay what you can. Suggested donation would be like $75 or $100, but whatever you can do for this 12-week course. It also includes optional mantra meditation classes on the side that are free. So check it out. I hope you guys will like it. It's bhaktywise.com. All right, so let's open up the real-time clock, and we are going to happy full moon, by the way. We've got a full moon in Leo. We're not going to spend so much time on the full moon today. Not that it's, an unremarkable full moon, but I'll just show you. You can see here's the full moon in late Leo. Let's plug in. Oops, got it. There we go. So you can see this full moon is not making any major aspects. The one thing we could say that it's doing, which is pretty interesting, is it is making a square to the nodes of the moon. So, in terms of an analysis, I don't feel like that is as significant as what is happening right here, which is the archetypal conjunction of Mars with Venus. Interesting that Mars is actually the one conjoining Venus, moving at a little faster rate at the moment than Venus is, who's just continuing to pick up steam moving forward. So, this is just a interesting conjunction between these two planets. I did a video earlier in the week on Venus and Mars that you can go back and check out if you want a deeper breakdown of their archetypal significance. So we're going to talk about a couple of themes today. And if I had to summarize them, it would be that like this. Theme one is the potential for a reconciliation of different tensions or a resolution of conflict and tension within certain areas of life based on which whole sign house Venus and Mars are meeting in. I think that this is promising right now because remember, in the background, Jupiter is forming a sextile with Uranus at the same time that we see the lovers uniting. This is usually, I take these two things together, especially Venus and Mars conjunctions in general, but I put these together and I say, this should be a moment where things are working out, where there's some sense of tensions being eased or even differences being reconciled. Now, there could be some level of creative or sexual tension that is also having to be, addressed. But the feeling that you get from when the lovers come together is that unlike things that could cause strife or discord or challenges end up working out. There ends up being, or they're appealing somehow, or they're interesting, or they hold our attention and draw us in as opposed to repelling us. So I think of this conjunction as very constructive overall, the potential for tensions to be eased or resolved and so forth. Now, number two would be for the theme of something a little taboo. And by that, I just mean anything that's a little controversial or provocative to grab our attention or to be momentarily or, temporarily important to us. And that could be something, in a relationship, at the workplace, just anything where the world may look at something and go, that's inappropriate, you know, but Venus and Mars coming together sometimes bring some attraction to that which is inappropriate. Remember that Aries and Aphrodite were illicit lovers, and that's a really important part of their symbolism in general. Okay, so what we are going to do is take a look at how these themes of the illicit, the provocative, or tensions being eased or resolved all come together based on the rising sign. We're going to start with Aries. So with Aries, we're looking at the conjunction of Mars and Venus in the 10th house. Now, this place was called praxis, like the word practice, to do something, and also is broadly associated with the idea that this house, there's a lot of action in this house and things that are seen very visibly, publicly, that shape our reputation, and also some relation to career or profession. So when you see the lovers uniting, you know, could there be something provocative happening in the workplace? You know, this is the fall in love with a coworker, you know, the illicit, you're not supposed to date a coworker, but you end up going out for drinks after work. You could also see tensions in the workplace being resolved, differing views or opinions being dealt with constructively. You could see that provocative energy presenting itself somehow right now in your career, in the topics or projects that you're working on, or just in terms of what's popping up in the work environment in general. So that's where to look if you're in Aries rising, noticing this. And this is not going away too. These two planets are traveling together within a degree of one another for another couple of weeks. So that's why it's important for us to take a moment and just try to identify, okay, where are they, you know? So watch for them in the career house if you're in Aries rising. Now, if you're a Taurus rising, we're watching for them in the 9th house, which is a place of the place that we look to understand our guiding beliefs, higher spiritual, philosophical, moral, or ethical principles, religion and spirituality, education in the higher mind, sometimes foreign travel, and so forth. So, for example, I think it's really interesting. I'm a Taurus rising. My wife is about to travel internationally, and I am going to be for a yoga retreat, and I will be with my mother, so the kid's grandmother, taking care of the kids for a while. So I think it's an interesting signature showing up there in the 9th house. But I recently did a reading for someone, and they're a Taurus rising, and I thought it was really interesting that they said, right now, I feel like I'm being really compelled to learn more about Tantra. And I was like, well, you know, here the whole philosophy, not just sexual positions, but the whole philosophy around sacred sexuality, and that they were getting into this. And I thought, well, that's interesting, because here's Venus and Mars going through a conjunction in the 9th house. So if our faith is being tested relative to the topic of love, relationships, sexuality, if we're trying to figure out what is pure or impure, what is healthy or unhealthy in relation to our desires, this is also about the changing and the changing, let's say, landscape of our faith and beliefs, if you're a Taurus rising, and also just a little bit of a provocative energy in that 9th house, and maybe pointing towards what kinds of tensions exist right now in your mind and in your sense of what is true or real or right. So interesting themes going on in the 9th house there, a place of the higher mind and beliefs. So that's Taurus rising. If we go to Gemini rising, it comes into the 8th house. I think this is really interesting as well, because the 8th house is the house that I consider to be entangling us in karmic contracts with other people. I think the simple way of breaking it down is saying there are debts that are due in life to each other. And some of those debts, you know, thank God for them. And some of those debts, thank God we pay them off, you know. And I like that Venus and Mars for Geminis are uniting in the 8th house in terms of there being positive karmic contracts with other people, meaning that there are either agreements that are being made or things that are being exchanged, that there is support that's being given or received, that there's a way of working through differing needs and figuring out who should receive, who should give. I think the potential to be paying off debts is there. I would be careful of the temptation of Venus and Mars in the 8th house to get entangled with someone or something that maybe isn't the best for you, especially given the presence of Pluto in that house. But I think more positively speaking, the idea of there being some kind of agreement that's reached and debts that are being settled karmically, or new relationships that have some kind of future of exchange between them on deeper, more complex levels karmically, is promised by this transit. So that's an interesting one for sure. I'd love to hear some stories about that 8th house Mars Venus from all of you Gemini risings out there. All right, let's go forward to Cancer rising. Cancer rising, it's like quintessential relationship stuff, right? Because Venus and Mars, the lovers, are conjoining in the 7th house of love and relationships. And so the potential for themes, again, anything relative to sexuality, love, romance, are really heightened with this one in particular. Cancer risings have the lovers meeting in the 7th house. Now, with Pluto there, is that illicit love? Is it adultery? Is it a provocative romantic tryst, but not something that lasts? Is it the deepening of a relationship that's been around for a while already? Hard to say which one will show up, because there's you have Venus and Mars in the house that is probably most like the conjunction itself. You're filtering the conjunction less through the topics of another house. That gives you a pretty wide range of what could be showing up in relationships right now, but relationships are highlighted. Could that also be that there's just, a season of, making love more in your relationship, or taking time out to go on dates, or there's deeper intimacy than there has been before? Could there also be some exploration of love in your life as a single person? Maybe I'm going to open myself up to dating. Maybe I'm going to go out on a date for the first time in a while. I think also love, desire, and different kinds of tensions that are being eased or worked with in key relationships. That seems all like the strongest possibilities for Cancer rising. Let's put Leo on the ascendant. Once we get Leo on the ascendant, then Venus and Mars are conjoining in the 6th house. And to me, this one is probably one of the more challenging, because the 6th house typically is the house of Mars. You have an exalted Mars in the joy of Mars. The 6th house is a complex house. One of the significations has to do with hard work, labor, sort of brutal work under the sun, slaving away. It's literally associated with slavery. Also, the 6th house is associated with people that we hire, or people that work for us as employees. It's also a house that's associated with things like selfless sacrifice, as in giving your life in a battle, the military. It's also associated with conflict. So given those things in general, Mars really is amplified in this house. So it makes me feel like there could be tension, conflict, frustration, challenges, hard work, the need for perseverance, and yet somehow those tensions or hardships are being eased, and there's a little bit of a silver lining thanks to Venus. Or, for example, someone that you're fighting with that you probably won't be good friends with, you somehow manage to reconcile with or come to some temporary agreement with. For example, as in the settlement of a case outside of court. People don't love each other because they settle, but they do settle. So I could see something like that, at least metaphorically, taking place right now, where maybe we're settling with the universe. You know what I mean? So that's my take on the 6th house placement for Leo rising. All right. So with Virgo on the ascendant, we're taking the lovers and putting them into the 5th. Now, this place was called the joy of Venus. So Venus is a little bit more amplified in this house, and it really is a house that had a lot to do with pleasure. Pleasure is complex. We have sexual pleasure. This house is also associated with pregnancy and children. It's associated with creativity and the arts. And generally speaking, anything that gives us entertainment or pleasure or recreational time, things that we do for the sake of joy and fun. When these two planets come together in the fifth house, I could see something, some simple things like I'm just doing more to have fun right now. We're staying up and playing cards that night. We're going out to see a movie, or just general questions about, like, what are the things that you do to have fun? And you could see them being a little bit more provocative, edgy, a little bit more like I would be careful, for example, not to gamble or drink too much or go to any extremes right now for the sake of being provocative and, rebellious. The reason I say that is because these two planets are going to meet with Pluto, and then they ingress into the sixth house. So for Virgos, I do think you have to be a little careful managing this energy and just saying to ourselves, okay, what's the healthiest version of pleasure that satisfies something of the desires in me, that is joyful and fun, but that doesn't make me pay the price later. At the same time, for Virgos, I typically worry more about the earth signs being a little bit more conservative or too cautious. And so maybe throwing caution to the wind a little bit is what this is all about for Virgos. Maybe that provocative energy in the fifth is like, just let your hair down. All right, let's take this forward to anything involving children, by the way, or pregnancy could also be peaking for Virgo risings right now. Okay, now we have Venus and Mars, if you're a Libra rising, coming into the fourth house. That is the place of home, family, parents, roots, land, ancestral karma, family constellation in general. So when the lovers meet in this house, it makes me wonder, for example, about marriage. This is another place where you could see starting to share a life with someone, moving in with somebody, having your first married bedroom as opposed to only having your own bedroom. So lots of interesting things that could correlate with marriage again. But then you also have the potential for conflicts or tensions to be eased among family members. You have the potential for there to be remodeling or redoing of things around the home. You could be doing something simple like painting a room in your house or doing a small home improvement project or something. The other thing, of course, would be the historical tensions around love and marriage in the family, and the larger family could be coming up right now. Sisters could be getting married or divorced, or there could also be, by the way, history, the family karma around love and relationships and sexuality being important right now or coming up, and maybe in a slightly more unconscious way. So just something to keep your eye on. All right, that's Libra rising. Let's go forward to Scorpio rising. Your Scorpio rising, this is coming into the third house. I think this is great for Scorpios because I think Scorpio rising people tend to really appreciate things that are deep, sincere, penetrating, mysterious, but no BS, and Venus and Mars conjoining alongside of Pluto in the third house suggests that more provocative topics mentally in terms of what you're talking about or thinking about are okay right now. They're somehow encouraged, or something very positive could come from being able to entertain more complex desires and more complex ideas and maybe wishes or desires that look like they're at odds with one another are being synthesized right now mentally. Maybe this is a month where you're having to communicate about the things you want or think or that are on your heart or mind, and you're having to do it in the face of potential opposition or difficulty. But surprise, surprise, it may be really a lot easier than you think it is. And Scorpios, I think, often are ready for the conflict or the potential for controversy. So I think, probing deep, honest, sincere mental, intellectual, communicative themes are in the air for Scorpios right now. You could also see, by the way, anything surrounding education, the mind, media, and the provocative lovers coming together and expressing themselves in your life at this time. So that's Scorpio. Sagittarius, we put the lovers into your financial house. So now we're saying, okay, Venus and Mars are getting together, and a house is associated with your time, money, energy, resources. When these two come together in this house, first of all, I think it's pretty auspicious in terms of investments that are being made or purchases. You could go a little bananas at the mall or something. You could go a little nutso shopping online. So I'd be a little bit careful of desire and impulse driving your spending for a little bit. But also, are you buying someone for something that someone you love? Are you being gifted something from someone you love? Also, how are you joining your resources with somebody else's for the sake of growing your business? Or I would look for potential relationships coming into your life, or agreements or arrangements coming in that provide you with something that'll be really useful. Like, this is a good, like, find that helping hand energy for Sages this month. And also giving that helping hand. I think, for example, what's so interesting is that, I was telling you guys, my mother is coming to help me watch the girls when my wife's out of town for a little bit. And my mom's a Sag rising. So here she is lending her help to me while my wife's out of town. Venus and Mars in the second house, helpful resources or being a helpful resource. Very much a part of this conjunction in the second. But otherwise, look for things around spending, money, finances, business, resources. And the conjunction overall, I think, is positive in terms of offering some kind of new conjunction of forces, energies, or people's resources that are available to you, or your own that are coming together in a unique way. All right, let's put Capricorn on the ascendant. Now we are taking the conjunction of Venus and Mars and we're putting it into the first house. So if you're a Capricorn rising, the synthesis is really about you. It's about your body. It's about your mind. It's about your sense of self, your self-esteem. I like this for a moment of gaining confidence, taking some risks, looking at your self-image and maybe doing something that's a little different. There's a new haircut, or, anytime that you have positive stuff in the first house, I think about positive things growing around self-image, physical appearance, diet, health, and so forth. At the same time, Venus and Mars in the first are also about admitting to yourself what it is that you want, what it is that you desire, and getting clear about that. And being clear about what we want is also getting clear about who we are, right? And then refining our desires so that we're also desiring things that are good for us in the long run. I see these as probably some of the most important themes happening for Capricorns. You could also be here feeling just a little bit hornier than usual with Venus and Mars in your first house. All right, if you're an Aquarius rising, we're taking Venus and Mars and placing it into the 12th. Now, I think this one is a little bit tough because there's something about the lovers in the 12th that could be a little illicit or inappropriate, or could suggest poor or fuzzy boundaries, or could suggest things like gossip or dealing with people conspiring against you behind your back, like people gossiping or something like that. So I don't love this conjunction in the 12th house so much. I think it could also speak to the complications of sexual desires, of the pleasure impulse. I think you're looking at some of the shadows of Venus and Mars in the 12th a little bit more with Aquarius rising than any other sign. So I think Aquarians in general, you have to look in the blind spots, see how the lovers are speaking in the unconscious. Maybe they're also exposing you to things that need to be addressed or looked at. I mean, the things in our blind spot are often the things that, we just fail to address in the right way. So what's the healthy way to address whatever Venus and Mars are saying in the unconscious right now? That could be something to consider for Aquarius rising. Last thing I'll say about this conjunction is that there's also something about unrequited love, loneliness, love and loss that come to mind. So just the growth experiences and love and relationships aren't always easy, but that doesn't mean that they're bad. Finally, we have Pisces rising, and this places the conjunction of the lovers into the 11th house. Now, the 11th house is called the place of allies and friends, benefactors, anyone we have a relationship with that may stand to benefit our ambitions in life, that we share values and resources with toward the fulfillment or realization of our goals or our dreams. This is also associated with communities or groups of people, but usually those that share common ambitions and that have almost like a networking feeling to them. So with Venus and Mars in this house, if you're a Pisces rising, I love this in terms of there being the development of positive resources professionally, colleagues that you meet that are helping out, groups of people or friends, allies in life that are coming together, and also the provocative stuff that has to be looked at within those communities, groups, friends, relationships. How are those tensions being eased? I think this is great, though, because the Venus-Mars energy in the 11th, to me, suggests powerful and helpful resources coming your way, especially if you're able to allow for there to be some distinctions and differences of opinion or value and still work towards synthesis regardless. So that's what I have for you. If you're Pisces rising, look for that conjunction in the 11th house of friends and allies as positive resources coming together for you there. I hope that this was useful for all of you to think about, okay, what area of life are Venus and Mars showing up in right now? And how can I, just take notice of where they are? I think it's really helpful to look and understand, the house position in particular. Full moon in Leo, you could also take a look at the Leo house today. Maybe there's a combination between the house of Leo and that place of Capricorn in your chart. So maybe worth putting a little bit of attention on Leo as well. But in general, I think that this is where it's at. By the way, here's a really simple example, the full moon in Leo. So full moon in Leo happens to be in my 4th house, which is the place of home, family, property, etc. And we had to have repair done on a fireplace that's in our home, and it's finished today, which means as the full moon is in the fire sign in the house of home and family, I'll be able to have a fire again this evening, which is, it's cold winter here. It's kind of a nice thing to do. So it's just sometimes the astrology is so simple, other times it's big and elaborate. It's also interesting that the full moon is in the 4th house of home and family. It happens to be my dad's birthday. So I was like, sometimes the astrology is so simple, but it's so sweet and just gives us reminders about, there's not one grain of sand that isn't a precious part of everything unfolding. And it's easy to rank the big stuff ahead of the small stuff. But to me, it's hard to appreciate the big stuff if you're not also recognizing the full moon fire sign as the fireplace is ready to go or whatever. So pay attention to the small stuff too. All right, that's what I've got for today. Make sure if you didn't watch it yesterday that you check out the Grabbed episode we did where we take a look at some of the stories you guys have been sharing recently. That was a really fun episode, some really great stories. So hope you'll check that out as well. And if you didn't listen to the first episode that I did this week on Venus and Mars and their conjunction, that was a really good episode too. A lot of really good feedback on that one. And I feel like we hit on some really good stuff about Venus and Mars that may help you further interpret today's conjunction if you haven't already listened to it. All right, that's what I've got. I hope you guys have a great day and we'll talk again soon. Bye.